Now you're welcome back. So we're going to talk some hurling, and we will do so in the company of Tommy Walsh, who joins us on the line. Tommy, great to have you on. How are things?
Yeah, all good, Joe.
So the weekend that was, just to jog people's memories, in Group 1A we had Wexford against Offaly, Wexford winning 122 to 212. We had on Saturday evening Cork against Galway 126 to 23 points, 6-point win for Cork in Cork. And on the Sunday we had an 18 points apiece draw between Clare and Limerick in Ennis. And then in Group 1B, Kilkenny at Parnell Park, very impressive against Dublin, it must be said, 223 to 16 points. Waterford put up a good score in Tipperary, and Tipperary had a lead early in this game, 128 to 28, 1 points, the final score there. That's three in a row for Waterford over Tipperary. And then Laois beat Antrim on the Sunday as well. Tommy, I suppose one of the things just to mention, it would be remiss of us not to, is that the death of Paul Shefflin, I think, hung over the weekend for a lot of hurling people and a lot of those matches. A younger brother of Henry, just 41 years of age, father of four. Great hurling career in his own right, you know, three-time All-Ireland winner with Ballyhale, immersed in the club. I know you were at the removal on Monday. I can only imagine the shock and the grief at what's after happening here.
Yeah, when word came out there on Friday, Joe, it was heartbreaking, I suppose, for the whole Kilkenny, you know. And, I suppose they're very much a very popular family, individually and as a group, going right back to Mum and Dad, Henry and May herself. So, listen, when it came out, 41 years of age, I think, and just a shock to everybody, you know. And he's heavily involved at the moment with the underage in Ballyhale for the last, couple of years. Kids himself playing and that. So everyone would have great dealings with Paul, and I suppose he always had a smile on his face. A very popular figure, kind of quiet and unassuming, really. We played him last year under 9. He was, over there Ballyhale team and 30 Ballyhale young fellas, and our lads went off with Tayshoes and Capri Suns happy out, and that's the kind of fella he was. And as you said, he had a great hurling career himself, and he was in Waterford IT with players from Tipperary and Cork and all over the country, really. So yeah, it has hit the GA community very, very hard, so we all send out our condolences to the Ballyhale community and to the Shefflin family and to Aoife and the children.
Yeah. One of those great people that keeps the community ticking over in a quiet, unassuming way, by the sounds of it then.
Yeah, just always smiling and kind of quiet, really, until, I suppose you're chatting to him, then he's full of life, and just like he was heavily involved in the senior club, like in administration, first of all, by all accounts, when he left, when he finished the hurling. And then, obviously, the last few years, I would have only come into contact with him last year through the under-9s and that, and brilliant with the young fellas, and I suppose going back to, I think I'm nearly sure that I marked him in my first championship game against Ballyhale back in 2000 over in Calendar. He would be in corner back. I was corner forward starting off, and he did his job quietly, and a couple of high balls came in, and normally I would have caught them. I was after getting in behind him, but at the last second, he gets the little touch, or you just don't catch it anyway. So, and he kind of led. That's the way he was. You might notice him out in front all the time, but he was the guy in the background doing the job diligently, hard working, and just really, you talk to anybody about him, an unbelievable popular and unbelievably nice guy,
Yeah, it's tragic. Condolences to all concerned from everybody here. Yeah. Look, everything we're going to discuss now pales into insignificance, so we'll proceed very much on that understanding and talk about hurling, which doesn't ultimately matter all that much. So from the weekend's action, Tommy, Waterford Tipperary was an interesting game. We had Paddy Stapleton on pre-match here. He was at the game for us, and he was making the point, Tipperary are very much in transition, and they've tried different styles and different games, but Waterford had beaten them twice last year, and Waterford were missing a number of big players at the weekend: Austin Gleeson, Desi Hutchinson, Callum Lyons, Jamie Barron, Borg Mahoney, you name it. A lot of big names out, and it was almost important for Tipperary not to be beaten again, and Tip took a nice lead and then were beaten, and beaten very well. Everything about this Waterford setup looks very promising right now. This has the potential to be a big year for them.
Yes, absolutely. They won the under-21, and I think it was 2016. They won a minor All-Ireland final as well, Joe. So this is coming. Like it's not coming out of nowhere. Just Liam Cahill hasn't come and waved his magic wand. There's foundations here. Ballygunner have had a huge success in Waterford. Obviously went on and lucky with a few monsters, but finally got over the line for the second or third time there this year in Munster, and then went on and had that glorious win, the All-Ireland final for the club. They went from heartbreak of so many years of losing, always kind of the bridesmaid, never the bride, in the All-Ireland series, and suddenly they're champions. So there's confidence, there's a foundation in this Waterford setup that gives them all hope. That it wasn't just a one-off victory against Tipperary. This is built on, a couple of years now of young fellas playing their trade in the Munster Championships and All-Ireland series. And suddenly now it looks like they have a panel that's capable of going on and contending for an All-Ireland final. I think the two big victories over the weekend, and it wasn't just the victories, Joe, it was the hope that they're giving their counties and the GA folk in their clubs, and that's Cork and Waterford. It's because they're coming with foundations. I was looking at the under-21 Roll of Honour, Joe, that's there today, right? And many successes, they lead on to senior victories. If you go back to the Cork 97-98 team with Sean Hogan, Dawn, Logan, the lads, they went on and won senior All-Irelands 99, 04, 05. Kilkenny then won a couple of under-21s. They had their glorious period. Clare, they won 09, 12, 13 and 14 under-21. Went on and won the 2013 All-Ireland final. Tipperary 2010 went on with that was the Pádraig Murray era, Shamie Callan. They won 3 All-Ireland 10, 16 and 19. I can go on. The Galway 07, 11, 21 team went on and won a senior All-Ireland. The Limerick 15 and 17 leading to this glorious period. But in between that, you have the Waterford team of 2016 and the Cork team currently, who was in the last 4 under-21 All-Irelands, Joe. Lost the first 2, fade away, never to be seen again. No, come back stronger, win 1. Now I've done 2 in a row. So under-21 victories of the past have paved the way, not a guarantee, but have paved the way and a foundation to future All-Ireland senior successes. And I think that's what we're seeing now in Waterford and in Cork. Right. Now, Liam Cahill, you mentioned him. He's absolutely playing a pivotal role then on top of all that with Waterford.
That's very interesting, because, well, certainly when it comes to minor level, people are quick to discount what it promises for the future. Maybe for 20s and 21s, we now need to look at it a bit more closely. That's some correlation, I have to say. I remember talking to a couple of the Waterford players when they reached that All-Ireland final against Kilkenny during the pandemic, and they were saying one of the things that Liam Cahill had been really trying to almost embed in them was to go for it. If you get a chance to run at goal or hurt your opponent, really just go for it, no hesitation. And the way they're playing now, you can see they've a few years of that mindset in them. And physically, they're in unbelievable shape as well.
They are, Joe. I'd say physically and mentally. Physically, and they're not all big guys, I'd say, naturally. But looking at them the weekend in Welsh Park in Tipperary, they just seem to have put on, a couple of kgs of muscle. So, probably tight fit jerseys as well is probably adding to it as well. But they're definitely buying into Cahill. But see, Liam Cahill as a hurler himself, first and foremost, was tough. He was as hard as nails, corner forward, but afraid of nothing from Ballingarry, only a club up the road from ourselves here. So that's his stock. And you'll often see a team or a panel will mirror their manager. He came into a Tipperary. I spoke about Cork being in the last 4 under-21 All-Irelands. They were shocked in the first 2. Cork were the red-hot favourites to win them 2 All-Irelands. But Tipperary, led by Liam Cahill, I'd say shocked them anyway, but it definitely was a surprise to win them 2, because we haven't seen many of them 2 Tipperary teams that won them All-Irelands come to the fore. Now, I know there was big stars. It would be much more difficult to break into the team at the time because Tipperary were flying at senior level, but still, he definitely won them 2 All-Irelands against the head. So Liam Cahill is made of tough stuff, and to win championships, no matter what grade it is, you have to be made of that stuff, because there's a time comes where you'll need it. And I think Waterford are showing that resolve at the moment. They seem to be mirroring their manager. The first few couple of minutes, Tipperary went up a couple of pints, and it looked like, they had a lead building. And usually if Tipperary have a lead like that in Waterford, it goes on to maybe a 7 or an 8 point victory. But they came back, not hurling particularly well in them couple of minutes, got the goal, and suddenly off they went, and they proved that they would, outlast Tipperary of the remainder of the game. So I think two teams probably in different phases of their development too.
Well, that's it. So it's very tempting at this stage to write Tipperary off for 2022. So Liam Sheedy had the opportunity to bring on a transition and chose not to, and maybe we're seeing now why he made that decision. There's nothing thus far, Tommy, to suggest that Tip are going to trouble an All-Ireland contender in 2022 in any great way. They just don't look at it.
Well, you see, up to the last couple of weeks, Limerick were red hot favourites. Nobody thought anybody could touch Limerick. Suddenly we've the two lads coming up, the contenders really that are just below Limerick now over the last couple of weeks. There's Cork and Watford. Why have Cork changed so much in the last couple of weeks? Like we've seen them getting to the All-Ireland final last year. Why suddenly have people put so much hope and optimism their way? And they seem to have changed the way they hurl. They're gone tougher at the back. Joe Molloy is adding a bit of steel to their defence. Darrell Leary, their full back. They seem to be finding a settled team and a way of defending. Last year's All-Ireland final was probably too open. There's too much space and they just got it very easily in the All-Ireland final. But this year, like against Limerick especially, Molloy was kind of half picking up Cian Lynch at times and then leaving, a free man, Mark Coleman or whoever behind him to kind of cover up and mop up behind him. Up front then, this is the big change I'm finding. Everybody is now trying to bring out the ball short to midfield and then get it up to the forward line. But I know from playing myself, you look up, Joe, you try and give in a good ball, but if everybody is being marked, you still give it in as best you can. So it's a 50-50 ball. Now, the way Cork have changed over the last couple of weeks, as far as I can see, is when they look up, normally they would hit it in, but now they're saying, oh, Patrick Horgan's been marked, Lehan is being marked, Harnady's been marked. Hold it up. They play the ball backways, sideways, like Limerick have been doing the last few years. Because then they've the fastest team in Ireland at the moment, both in defence and midfield. Darragh Fitzgibbon as well. The fierce pace. They can get the ball in them short spaces and go past the fella. So I think Cork have changed their game as well. So that's given them huge optimism. So
yeah. And hang on a moment. Have you sidestepped my Tipperary question? Are you resisting the opportunity to tell me Tipperary are rubbish? What kind of Kilkenny man are you?
Yeah, I don't think you'd love me to say that. I know that.
But they're not. There's something. I mean, it doesn't mean that they'll come good eventually. But they're not at it this year. This does feel like period of transition now, or no?
Yeah, definitely transition. Definitely, but a lot of teams in transition have won All Irelands, Joe. So why am I not writing them off? Because like Dublin were flying. Next minute, Kilkenny beat them. Tipperary beat Kilkenny. Kilkenny going to beat Dublin. Now people are saying Kilkenny are there's too much kind of one team beats another. There's no really consistency on one team winning every match. And there's two different groups as well. You have the tough group, which is the one which Wexford and Cork and Galway, that group, they're all kind of, it's the group of death really. Whereas over on the other side is definitely an easier group. So you can't read too much into it either. But Tipperary, they're a team in transition. Their best players are probably, Pádraig Maher's retired, Brendan Maher's retired. They were sensational hurlers for a long period of time. So the only time, though, and this is the difficult thing for Colin Bonner this year, is the young players that he's bringing in now haven't been really blooded yet, bar maybe Jake Morris. He has to blood these guys. Yeah. And you have to trust the young lads. And what they'll need is a bit of luck, really. They're playing Watford, I think, in the first game. I'm not sure if it's in Welsh Park or Thurles, but, if they could get off to a victory there, which I wouldn't rule out the equation, suddenly you don't know where you're going to end up,
Okay. So let's talk Limerick then, because everybody's very focused on them at the moment. 18 points apiece against Clare. 11 of last year's All-Ireland final starting 15 started this game. So there are 3 defeats, 1 draw. Now let's assume for a second they'll beat Offaly in the next round, and then suddenly Championship fast and furious is upon them. What's off with Limerick? What's not quite happening for them here? Where are the shortcomings in their play in comparison with the brilliant stuff that we've become very accustomed to?
Yeah, first of all, they're in the group of death. They played Galway, Garrod was sent off, so they played fairly well in most of that game. Were beaten then in the last couple of minutes. Galway, up in Galway, I'm not sure where it was, but Henry had them zinging that day. They were fired up. They knew they were playing the All-Ireland champions, and Galway have the hurlers to do that. So a lot of the games, they're not getting over the line. Clare again the weekend, the draw match. So they're not that far away. What's the difference? They were beating teams all over out of the park the last couple of years. This year, I think definitely teams have their standards have risen, and then you have a team that's on the road. They're on the road the last 3 or 4 years. I think John Kiley is trying to find players that Peter Casey's out, so he needs to find players that he can add to the 16 or 17 that he's been playing. Like if you look back to 2018, it's been mostly the same players, say 1 to 20 that he's been using. So he's trying to find a couple of lads,
and Tommy, the sense on that is he hasn't found many.
We'll see. He only needs one or two. Cathal O'Neill and But listen, you only find out in championship, and they're going to go into the championship, and you'll probably have 12 or 13 fellas, and then bring in 1 or 2 guys. They look good then on the big day, and suddenly their careers start off. You always have to start somewhere. I always find, Joe, it depends on how your team is doing. If Limerick were winning these last couple of games, the two or three new players that you're introducing to your team, suddenly if they score 2 or 3 points, they're great. They're great fellas. But because they're losing, everyone is focusing on the negative side of Limerick play. So the narrative might all change if they start winning a couple of games. Suddenly Cathal O'Neill and these guys are superstars. So I think it's not working out too bad for John Kiley and his charges, because having been there, like we went for the 3 in a row in 0-4, and looking back, we had huge success probably in training hard. Like every match was an All-Ireland, every training session, was an All-Ireland. Yeah. And you went so hard, tackling drills left, right and centre. And I think in 0-4 we were nearly wore out. It was there was no freshness as such to us. And it kind of looks like that now with Limerick. That probably look a bit off the bile fresh. They're not that fresh looking. Obviously all the criticism coming their way as well. It's not helping matters. So they have a couple of weeks off now. They're out of contention in the league, Joe. So I think this is going to actually suit Limerick coming into the championship.
And no, it's a really interesting point, because I was going to ask you, so with their weeks off now, and I agree with you on that freshness point, because they have a lot of miles on the clock psychologically and physically, and it's no easy thing. Like they could very easily be gone for 5 in a row here, but for a slip up. So that is kind of the length of tenure.
What slip up do you talk about there, Joe?
Yeah, that is the length of tenure that we're talking about. So I wonder if you're John Kiley and Paul Kinnerk, you must be chatting and saying, we're just missing that bit of something. What do you think we should do over the next few weeks? Like, should we say, let's skip training that Tuesday, we'll go for a swim and get ice creams afterwards and just try and have a bit of fun? Or do you get in there and do you train hard and leave the whistle in the pocket kind of matches? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. I'd say, I'm not sure, is it 4 or 6 weeks now to championship? So I'd say this week and next week maybe, chill out, maybe refresh, maybe let them back to the clubs maybe for a week or that. But I'd say freshness, like you can't go hard at for 6 weeks. So, and I'd say build it back up then, say about 3 weeks coming into the championship game, Joe. So I definitely think they'll be away from the media for a couple of weeks. They'll be away from, the cameras, the podcasts. There'll be no one really, I suppose, be able to talk about a specific match last weekend. So they'll be away from the limelight. And they'll be able to look at the way teams are setting up against them. That has changed also as well. But I think the major thing for them is freshness. Yeah. I think they need to just relax now for a while, maybe. As you said, if they're going to train 3 times or 4 times normally, train twice. Maybe train once this week, train once next week, then build it back up. Let them do a couple of gym sessions. Like it changes as good as the rest of that stage. But I definitely wouldn't be, from my experience of going for a 3 in a row the first time, I wouldn't be going head for leather for 6 weeks.
Yeah. The red cards aspect is interesting as well. And some of the red cards, so there was Galan, and you think of the Grouch Hegarty as one as well. There's a degree of almost frustration about those red cards. There's a degree of, I'm at the end of my tether here and you're fouling me or giving me a nudge in a way I don't like and I'm going to lash out, which is, an interesting trend in them. I would have thought after the Grouch Hegarty one, that would have been the ideal time where they would have got together and said, well, let's draw a line under those. That's the end of them. And yet here we are a couple of weeks on and it's another silly red card. Why do you think that creeps into a team, Tommy?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think the game has changed phenomenally over the last 10, 15 years, Joe, as regards I'd love to see a stat. Maybe your guys can do it during the week. I'd love to see a stat on the amount of red cards, we'll say, in 2022 National League, or so far this year, or even last year, versus 20 years ago. Say when I started back in 2002. So there's a serious amount of red cards going on in today's game versus back then.
Yeah.
Now, before, I know you're probably going to, but
Well, I was going to say we
So
could
the
do
game
we
has
could
changed.
do a program where we watch back all of your career and see how many red cards Tommy Walsh should have had by today's standards.
Would have got. I mightn't be on this today. I could be in jail. So the game has changed. Like, Joe, when we were growing up at games, playing the game, the mentality was, don't go to the referee looking for help.
Yeah.
So
Sort it out yourself. Sort it out yourself.
Sort it out yourself. You know, fight fire with fire. It was nearly, you were looked at soft. If you went up to the umpires, listen, look at your man, he's pulling and dragging out with me.
Yeah.
It was nearly kind of, look at him, the corner forward, he's soft or whoever. Look after yourself. It's a man's game. But this is where these players have to learn now, and even myself still playing the game. You just can't do that anymore. You can't look after yourself. You have to either be tough enough to take the digs in the back or the pulling of the jersey and just wait for your opportunity that you can damage them on the scoreboard, damage them with a goal, damage them with a point. And, you know, sledging has never been in hurling as far as I remember, and still in the club game today. Some might say you're useless or gone slow or something.
And actually, sorry, can I ask, are you gone a bit slow?
Probably, yeah. That's why you just said it.
But anyway, this frustration in the Limerick players, are this taken into their own hands? Because they'll know they shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, so, like, basically, you have to be the game has changed so much now, they'll just have to assess what's happening so far in the league and say, listen, referees are looking out for us now, we're the champions. So there's even, like, if you're playing Limerick in the morning, I'll put it this way, Joe, and say a Cork or a Water, and they put it up to Limerick, physically, tough, you know, coming in maybe with a late tackle here or there, or shoving them out over the line, or people will say, the narrative will be different. They'll be saying, look at them, the heart of Cork, they're gone tough, they're mentally tough now, they're up for this. Towards when you're champions, you have to be ready for the criticisms. So I think nothing really has changed with Limerick. They're just going to have to be a bit more clever. There can be no retaliation anymore, no looking after yourself. The game has changed, and that's the way they'll have to play come championship, because the focus will be on them.
Yeah. A quick last word before you go. Parnell Park, Dublin 16 points, Kilkenny 223. So Kilkenny looked very good, and number of the Ballyhale fellas back. I caught a bit of this on TV, but by the time I tuned in, Kilkenny had them broken, like the game was over, and they were very impressive. David Blanchfield caught the eye as well at half back, scored 3 points. So what are we saying about Kilkenny on the back of their league campaign thus far?
Yeah, well, they're after finding it's at the Tipperary match, a couple of their games so far this year, and they're finding new players. Kilkenny midfield is, you know, he's in the Cian Lynch mould, stylish, skillful, hurls left-handed, just beautiful with the ball. So we're after finding a little gem in Kilkenny midfield, and you need them type of players in today's game. As you said, David Blanchfield, I'm very surprised even his brother, he has another brother, Kevin Blanchfield, plays midfield, big strong guy, left-hander, a fantastic hurler over the last, you know, I'd say 6 or 7 years with his club, won junior All-Ireland, senior or intermediate All-Ireland with his club. But David himself is the younger brother, and he's fantastic. The last couple of years, his club team have played like, you know, the modern game, finding the man the best position for the last, since they were young.
Right.
So he's really going to fit into the modern game. So Kilkenny have found new players, and their centre, the spine of the team is starting to, you know, shore up. You have Hugh Lawler full back, Paddy Deegan centre back, you have Park centre forward, and you've probably, you know, maybe TJ to come back in full. So you build a team around your spine then, and listen, it's looking promising that we can contend, yes.
Okay, interesting. Very, very last one. So this hand passing business seems to have come up again. There's often something in the league, isn't there? And Kieran Kingston, I think, made a fair enough observation, because I think this does tend to happen between league and championship. He said, referees, I understand, and we were told today they're clamping down on the hand passing. And that's great, and it's right that they should clamp down on it. But the challenge will be, come championship, will they clamp down on it then? One rule for the league, another rule for the championship, he was saying. And I think that's frustrating from a training point of view and from a management point of view. If that's the rule, fantastic, we've no problem with it, but it better be the rule for the championship as well. So I'm sure, like, this happens in both codes. Something's enforced in the league, and then it's back to normal business come championship. So where are you in this hand passing stuff?
Yeah, back to G and this one, Joe. It's not hand pass. Like, there's so many hand passes now, so we're seeing, you know, the volume of hand passes in the game has risen dramatically over the last couple of years. But like if you look at the TV, you know, if you look at the highlights or any of the hand passes, like there's a lot of them are throws. And I know you can pick out the one. There was a little bit of separation between the hand and the ball, but there's a lot of them throws.
I think most of them, watching on TV, most of them are throws.
I agree with you, and I think there's going to be a bit of you know, suffering early doors, and because, you know, it's going to be very difficult for the referees to spot, you know, the one that maybe there was a little bit of separation, but they're the mistakes people are going to make. And I think coaches are now going to have to coach the player. Don't give the referee any excuse. So don't just have, you know, a small little bit of separation. Make sure that they can see the hand pass, because the risk is huge. There's a free given against you and suddenly you lose by a point. But we can't have thrown in the game. So, you know, then it becomes like American football. The hand pass, like we seen DJ Carey years ago, like the hand pass when done correctly is an incredible skill of the game. So we can't just allow that to throw the ball.
You must have thrown it though. You know, you're in the white heat of battle. You don't have much time. You throw it.
You're trying not to.
Okay. So you were trying not to.
Well, see, there wasn't as much tackling back then. Swarms. You're seeing it so much now because there's so many swarms.
Okay.
And so you trying to get it away as quickly as possible. But I was listening to Anthony Daly yesterday, and he made a good point. Like, with so many hand passes now, if they are being, you know, if there's not as many hand passes, you won't be inclined to go into the tackle, Joe. So you might get the ball down, drive it as fast as you can. It might lead to a better spectacle.
Yeah.
The swarm is tough to look at, isn't it? But I know, listen, I don't want to look back. You have to look forward. But it might lead to less people going into the tackle if they're afraid of getting caught with the hand pass.
No, that's an interesting point. There can be unintended consequences with these things. Well, look, to Kingston's point about championship versus league, it is going to be a brave referee in the last 5 minutes of an All-Ireland final who pings someone for it. Mark my words, there won't be a hand pass foul given in an All-Ireland final, really. Certainly not in the second half.
No, but Joe, I'd say, listen, he's in, but as an observer, maybe the point is being missed here. The message is being sent out.
Okay.
It's like when you go into school and you're at secondary school the first day and your teacher nails it because you don't have a blue and a red pen. Well, if he nails it for that, you know this guy means business and you're not going to mess in this lad again. So send out the message hard and fair in the league, and then listen, you can be that bit softer in the championship. At least people might be trying to do the right thing. Like, nobody wants, I don't want to see a lad being blown up for a hand pass, whether he does it incorrectly or not, in an All-Ireland final or any championship game for that matter, which leads to his team losing. But what I would like to see is send out the message now hard and fair, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, okay. Well, listen, are you gone?
No, I'm here. Oh. Yeah.
Well, listen, thanks for that. And by the way, if anybody dares tell Tommy Walsh on a pitch that he's lost it and he's lost his pace or he's over the hill, he'll have us to answer for. Tommy, thanks a mil.
They were me brothers.